Funding for The Router Workshop is provided in part by Hitachi Power Tools, manufacturers of a full range of construction and woodworking power tools. On part 1 of our construction series, we began with basic stair building theory. We then routed the treads and risers. Today, Bob and Rick show you how to make a fixture to route perfect stringers every time. Then we show you the magic of how all the parts fit together. Next, right here in the Router Workshop.
Welcome to the Router Workshop. This is part 2 of basic stairs. And Dad, what are we going to do today?
The stringers. And I'm going to leave you this pattern, Rick, that we have made. And this is your jig for routing them with, so I'm going to let you take that and do it. And what I'm going to do is show them how to make this and actually make one up for them so they can make it in their shop.
All right, okay. I'll go ahead and get these stringers set up, and you go ahead and show them how to do that. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and set the pitch for the treads on the stringers. This first stringer I've got mounted in place has got a line that gives us the 2-inch, which is going to line up all the noses of all the treads down the side of the stringer. The next thing I want to do is I'm using the square, which is set up at 10 and 7, and that's going to give us the pitch that we're looking for. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a line. That's a starting point for us to go ahead and route. So I'll line it up here, and let's put a line in place. Once we have the line here, now that goes ahead and sets us up to the pitch to match that jig that Dad's just made. And what I'm going to do now is bring up the jig that we've got here. And again, to get left or right, because we have to have left or right, we have to make sure we got it flipped the right way. We're going to start off. The first one's easy. It's the second one. You have to make it opposite to what the one that you've done the first time. If you notice here, we're going to just line up the tread line on here right onto the line. It doesn't, and then it has to match the nosing, because that 2-inch space right on the tip of the nose has to line up with the line. So we get to get those two lines put in place, not really caring what's happening anywhere else on this. Once we have those lines positioned, you'll notice that the front of this is not flush or even with the front of the stringer. So I'm going to go ahead and mark a line on here. Scribe a line on the side here. Now you notice I've got the scribed line onto the plywood jig here. Well, now that's a little off. So I'm going to get that cut now so that when I move this down along the side, it's going to be flush. Now I've already got one cut, so let's just take a look at it here. I'll bring it up and we'll put it in position here. First thing we want to do is make sure we're flush. The next thing we want to do is we want to line up so that we're right on that line. Okay? Now that we've got the line and we're flush in place, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put some nails in there to hold it in position while we're routing it. Now you can't put any clamps on this because your router's going on the top. So what we're using here is a little finish nail, and we're just going to tack it. If we're careful in positioning the nails, we won't have to worry about the nail holes, because if we're using in the back, you notice here I'm underneath where the treads are going to be. This one is also, and this one here is on the top and the back where the back treads are. So we'll nail that down in place. Now I've got it tight. I've got it flush, tight. Now we're going to need a router. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get the router here. I'll bring it forward. The first thing we need to do is go ahead and let's look at this for a second. We'll bring the cutter up in place, lock it down. I'm using a 1/2-inch spiral cutter that's going to give us with a guide on it, and the guide's going to follow along the edge on the inside of the pattern, and it's going to make our stringer notches. The depth we're going to use is we're setting that depth up, and we're going to go ahead and first off zero the tool down so it just touches the top of the stringer, and then what we're going to do is we're going to set the depth at 1/2 inch. Well, we've got her set at that depth right now. That tells us how deep we're going to make the notch. All right. Now that we've got it all set up, let's make sure that we've got our power in place. It's in off position before we start. Move things out of position here and get it plugged in. All right, when we start here, we want to make sure that we're moving into the cutter. You can tell if you're moving on the wrong side because it's going to pull you on the inside. You want when you push the router, you want the router to be pushing up against your pattern and keeping it that way. So we're just going to go ahead partially way down and lock it in place, and let's get started here and make this in a couple of passes. So we'll start the router. If you're following in the right direction here, and I'm just going to get a brush here to clean this out, let you look at it. If you're following in the right direction, you'll notice that we've already got it cleaned out along the outside. Now all we have to do is clean out the inside of this piece. Now I've found the easiest way to do that is to work in swirling motions and just going ahead and taking as much as the cutter can take at a time. So I'll go ahead and we'll go ahead and swirl it around there and take it out. I mean, a little practice of doing this a couple of times, you'll figure that out real quick. I'm kind of going with the grain when I'm cutting it as well. So we'll start it up. You really don't have to worry about having a problem because the guide's going to keep you inside the area that you're looking for. You just want to make sure you dust it off. And if you notice here, I've got a couple of little areas here where we're missing on it. You want to make sure that you've got this completely cleaned out before you change your jig position, because if you don't do that, then you're either going to have to use a chisel to clean it out, or you're going to have to go ahead and go back and try and get it to match again, which is very difficult to do. So we'll go ahead down, drop it down here, and make the final cut on this. I'm going to set the router over here for a second. Now that we've gone ahead and got the marks in place, we need to position the next tread. And to do that, what we've done is set it up so that we've got a mark here with the 10-inch tread. The 5/8, 3/4 inch overhang is in position. So we're just going to go ahead and follow this line here. And I'll just release it here. It's easier to show you than to actually talk about it. So we'll get this released. Be very careful that you don't nick your pieces. And I'm going to take these nails here and tap them back. And there's our first tread. Now what we want to do, besides blow it off, is go ahead now and move the jig down. If you watch what we're doing here, you see this line? We want to keep it flush to this top here until it matches the line that's on the place, and that's going to give us our next position for our next stringer. Again, you got to be very careful that you're flush and that you're on the line, because if you don't do that, you got 20 stringers here, or 20 treads you're putting in, and you're not careful at positioning it each time. By the time you get down at the other end, 20/8 of an inch is a lot of material. All right, so then we just go ahead and let's repeat that cutting position. Let's set it up and cut it. Again, I can't emphasize enough the fact that you check these and clean them before you move them to make sure that you have them all cleaned out, because I've done this once before where I've had to go ahead and take a chisel and clean it up, and you know that's always the toughest part of the whole thing. So I'm just going to take this off here and let you take a closer look at this. And because we only have 2 treads here, where's my hammer? We take this off, pound out the thing, and basically there we have the 2 stringers. Now the only other thing we have to do is get the left side and go ahead and set it up and finish it.
What I'm going to show you here is the layout first, and then we're going to tack some sticks on here, and then we're going to cut this out. With the layout, we use a framing square, and that's what I've been taught to use, so that's what I like to come with. And these happen to be little stair fixtures in it, and our step in here that we did was 7 and 11. So we take on 7 in it, or 7 and 10, or whatever you've got in here, and these lock on. So if you were marking out your step, then you could put it on here, and as each step you go, you mark it across the top. That's the idea of them. Well, in this system that I've got in here, and you got to see this piece in it, what we've got to have is this piece at the top, and that's the top of the tread, and this is the face of the riser. That has got to be 90 degrees across the corner, and that's what we've got. But what I have back here is a different thing. And what we've got inside of here is that we've got a 3/4 inch. And when I say 3/4 inch, that's the riser in it. So if I just put a pencil mark on there, you can see that it's wider at the bottom. And that's where the wedge goes in. And that's how you get your wedge size. So we've laid this back. And we've allowed enough room for this to make the clearance on past that, so we go by the rabbet on the back of the tread. So on the same thing happens with your tread. If we were to parallel a line out here, you'll see that it's also got a wedging effect in it. The other thing is the nosing. That is, how much does it stick over the front? Well, we've allowed in here 3/4 of an inch. And I'd put a little round radius on those, and the reason for it is we want a radius on the front of them anyway, but the bit will leave that much for us. Now, what I'm going to do is we've got the layout, and I've allowed enough room in here. So what happens is, if you've got a 10-inch tread, you can mark your 10 inches back here, and you can mark that in on that side. Then if you've got a 7-inch riser on it, that's from the top of the tread to the next one, that's 7 inch, you can mark that also in here. That's what Rick was going to use as has on his stringer over there. That's where his locations. Now, if you need to change that, this can turn and move whenever you wish in it. So you've got all kinds of options. You don't have to do the set size that we did using this fixture. Okay, we got the layout. Now, let's take these little pieces. I've cut some pieces in here, and we're using a flush trim bit, so that allows us to tack that right on the line. And we'll just put some little tacks in here, and that'll just hold that together. And then, of course, we've got the next one in here. That's the top piece in it, and it comes right out to the front of the nosing here. And we'll tack that one in and bring it back there. And we have to close the gap up on the back side here, so we've got another little stick in here. And it doesn't really matter at the back side because it's not going to show. In fact, that routes right out past the stringer anyway. Now, got another one in here, a little front piece. We got a front piece of this one, and we got a bottom. So we can put this one down in here. I'll just slide it ahead there a bit. And then we'll bring this in. And, of course, it's got to be right on that leading edge. So we'll tack that in here. And we'll tack that one in. This is not a good thing to do on your living room table and have the nails go through, you know, but I'm doing it on my router bench. But I'm a little careful here that I know how far I'm driving those nails. Now, those are solid in it. And now what we're going to do is I have a hole in here, and that's a pilot hole to let my bit come into. So let me set it aside, and I'll raise this cutter up so you can have a look at what I've got in here. What we've got here is a flush trim bit. That is, it's got a cutter on either side, and it has a bearing. And it's that bearing is going to follow those little sticks that I nailed on. And just let me put that over the bit in it. And I'm going to have to lower that cutter down so the bearing can run on those sticks. So we'll bring that down in there about like that should do the job. Make sure you get it so it cuts. There is a little gap between the bearing and the cutter. Now, it's not going to go anyplace, but you have to remember which direction to feed. So you feed it down in here that it keeps on the track. And be careful with the little piece that's inside of here afterwards so it doesn't rattle around. So just leave it on the pilot hole there. I'm going to get some power, and we'll plug in here, and we should be ready to go. I'm going to zap that up a little bit. we got a mess in here. We'll just dust it off a little. And I'll lift that by. I'm going to just drop that router bit down so we can have a look at what I did in here. Drop it in. Now you can see the fixture from this side is nice and clean. Just take a little sandpaper and take out the little furry edges that you want on it. And the neat thing about that is when you get these things off of here, if you take these pieces off, what you've got is a complete fixture.
All right, now let's take a look at the left-hand side. I'm just going to move the router out of the way and bring in the other stringer here. Let's unplug it first. And we'll bring in the other stringer, clean off some of the dust. Now we have the next one. Now the real trick to this whole thing is to make sure we get left and rights. Now I'll bring up the pattern we've got here. If you look at it, this is the way we've completed this one. To do the next one, what we need to do is flip the pattern over so that they're opposites. And you can tell when they are because you're going to have a V shape here. You're going to have a right and left. And a good thing to do, folks, is to go ahead and cut the one, and then before you start the next one, make sure you mark an X on the side that this one's going to give you for the number 2 one. And you can even put an X and maybe put a number 2. Anything that's going to tell you that this is the side I use for the next side. Because I think when you start putting this together, you don't want to have 2 rights or 2 lefts. You want to have a right and a left.
People, basic stairs, even if we say they're basic, they can be very complex. They can be frustrating and they can be very confusing onto the layout. And keeping that in mind, maybe we should just review of what I've talked about. We have a set of drawings here, little shop drawings, more than sketches, and you need that when you start. And the idea of the sketches and the drawings here is to give you a little better shot of what you're doing and mark down your measurements. Number 1, what is the total run? Well, that's the distance you have, the length of the stairs that you have to work with. The total rise is from one floor to the next. That's how high you have to get. Let's go over some basic definitions. Stringers, that's the sides of the stairway. The treads are what you walk on, and the riser is the part which fits in between the treads, giving you the necessary rise to each top. The old formula we used to use was based on a number, and the number was 17. That is to say that the total width of the tread, that is the part you put your foot on, and the total height of the rise, those 2 numbers should equal 17. For example, let's use a tread of 10 inches because that's a nice standard, and then that will give you a 7-inch rise. Or if you had a 12-inch tread, that would give you a 5-inch rise. That total then will equal 17, and that's what we base it around. When you hear the term house stringer, this simply means that the treads, the risers, have been let into the stringers by means of mortising them in. That is, we cut into each face of the stringers. Use of the router in this operation can achieve the high degree of accuracy necessary for the solid set of stairs. Also, it eliminates the need for mechanical fasteners. There's nothing worse than a few squeaky nails or screws in a stair. But by using the house stringer, and then you eliminate the squeaks by using wedges. This is what makes it so successful. Stairs were generally left to the skilled craftsman. I know you could buy them manufactured to suit whatever you needed in them, but it's kind of fun to build your own things. Now, with the use of the router, all you need is some simple layout tools. You'll need a little jig that you can make, and then you tack that on your stringer and route them out. It's so easily to do. And remember, don't use any mechanical fasteners in it. Just put those wedges in place, because that'll make the stairs just exactly the way you had intended them to be. And make sure that you get all the risers the same height, and you'll have a beautiful set. Just get at it and do it, and have fun.
It's time for Router Bits, where we highlight viewer mail and projects. Our viewer mail this time is from Hans of Southern California.
Dear Bob and Rick, I like what you folks do with the router. There's always some new use for the most versatile tool in the workshop. I've been in the building business for many years and am now retired. My interest is to design and build what I call old-time toys. I've sent you one of the toys I designed as a pull toy for a small child. This one's called the Engine. Once the toys are designed and built, I like to try them out at the local school. This is not only a pull toy, but it's a first introduction to the cam and valve system of an engine. It gets the kids thinking at an early age, and I think it helps develop their imagination. I used the router to make the wheels, cam, and piston parts, and the frame. I appreciate your contribution to my router skills. Keep up the good work. Yours truly, Hans.
Our second viewer is Jim from Florida.
Dear Bob and Rick, I'm sending you one of my mug trees that I sell at craft shows. You'll notice that I've used one of your tricky dovetails that always gets the question, how did you put that together? It's a great way to start a conversation with a potential customer. On the bottom, I used the router to mold the edges. I find this to be a simple project that's a good mover for me at craft shows, all because I use my router. Sincerely, Jim.
Well, I got the stringer here finished now.
Good. I brought some blocks over here for the glue blocks.
All right. Let's take a quick look and show them how this is all going to go together, and then we'll put it together.
Well, Rick, I'll put the first tread in here and set it in, and we'll just show them how this wedge goes in. The wedge has kind of got lots of room in here, and it's built, designed especially for it. And I'll just slide that in there snug.
No nails required, right?
On this one.
Now, the tricky part is that the riser has to be able to slide in behind this and put it in place right well and allow us to go ahead and put the wedge in as well.
Did that ever fit nice? And then that wedge just slides in like that, see?
Now, let's take it apart and show them the complete dry assembly of the stairs.
Great idea.
All right, so we'll take this top off, the bottom in place. Are you going to set up the sides? Let's get the distance right.
You hold those both hands on
I'll hold those both hands, and you're going to go get the other.
There's always a pain. Can you imagine when you got all them steps in there?
Right. Can you imagine when you have 20 of these to do? Yeah. Get the front. We start with the front and the back just to get us together, and then you're going to put a clamp on that other end, on the bottom end of the stairs. We got enough room there?
Yeah, I got enough. I've got to leave room to get that riser in there.
Okay, that's enough. We're going to lose this other. This is always
over there.
Yeah.
Got it?
Yeah.
And we'll let that go by there.
All right.
And we'll just tighten this up in here. That's good. Now,
all right. We've got it started.
You don't need a lot of tension on it.
No, just to start.
I'm going to get my rubber hammer here, Rick, and we want that nosing to come in there tight, so we'll just drive those right down snug.
And this is the time when we put glue on these, but we're going to make sure it dry fits first.
And we'll put this piece in.
All right. Slide that one in.
This one in, too. Now you can get your risers.
All right. We'll take the bottom one and slide him in. I think I'm going to flip him around.
Okay.
And you loosen that off just a little bit.
I cupped it in here, just a little shade in there.
All right.
Watch that clamp that's down in below here. Get it? Good. Want the rubber hammer?
Yeah.
Give that a little tap on either end there. Now, right down in that needle.
Yeah, right tight to the outside.
Yep.
Right on. Okay.
I'll just tighten that up just a little bit.
Now we'll try number 2
these can go in any time, Rick. It doesn't matter which ones does it.
No.
Because they fit. I'll let you put that in. And
all right. We'll slide this number 2 in. We can start putting the wedges in, can't we?
I'm going to start. Remember, we got to glue them, and we are gluing them. We're dry fitting, so. And you can put the other riser in there, I think.
This is looking like it's going together good, isn't it?
It might even fit after a while.
Yeah. I'll get another tread, or another riser in place here.
Yeah, we got that one in it. This one here, we just got to put it like that.
Perfect.
Put my last piece in. Oh, I got one more wedge to put in. How about you?
I've got one more wedge, too.
Got room for it?
Yep.
Put it on the other side there.
Got it in.
Got it inside. Now, let's show them one more thing, Rick.
I've got one more.
You got 2 more to go in there, don't you?
Yeah, I got to go ahead and put it in my last riser here.
One nice thing about steps like this, people, when you use wedges, you got no squeaking, you got no give in it because it's all glued into place.
No nails.
And no nails. These are the only things that we always put a little tack in. And what these are is give you a little support in here. This doesn't matter on a 2-foot, but if you had a wider one, and we just pop those little angle blocks in there.
Glue them in place.
I even got one extra one.
And basically, we have the basic stairs using your router.
Now, what we need to do is take the clamp off, and let's tip it over and let them have a look at it from the other side. I got this clamp.
And I'll let you grab that other one.
Yep. And we'll just rotate that around.
And this should just hold together.
Now, glue blocks, I didn't glue them in anyway, but they're there. And let's stand it up and let them have a peek.
And there we go. We got perfect stairs with your router. See you next time on the Router Workshop.
We'd like to hear from you. You can email us at the address on your screen. Send your comments, questions, or project ideas to The Router Workshop, Post Office Box 608, Chamberlain, South Dakota, 57325. Or in Canada, The Router Workshop, Post Office Box 280, Ely, Manitoba, ROH-OHO. To learn more about The Router Workshop, visit us at the internet address on your screen. In the hands of experts, the router is truly a magical machine. Bob and Rick Rosendahl are truly master craftsmen who can show you the fine art of routing, from a simple box-jointed walnut ash paper tray to a complex yet beautiful raised panel chest. They take you step by step through each unique project. Next time, right here in the Router Workshop. Funding for The Router Workshop is provided in part by Hitachi Power Tools, manufacturers of a full range of construction and woodworking power tools. For $16.99 plus $4.99 shipping and handling, you can order Bob and Rick Rosendahl's The Router, a 130-page book which includes a plan to build the router table and bench, plus numerous tips, techniques, and educational information. Call 1-800-803-1449.